So I saw Five Nights with Freddy. It seemed like a nice movie. And then the more I watched it, because I knew it was a scary movie, but I was like waiting for the scary part. And it was like confusing at first because I was like, when is this movie getting scary? And then I realized this movie was scary the whole time. Well, not scary, but it was like kind of like weird. Because there's this guy, he's a security mall cop, and then he's gonna go get something, and then he sees this guy pulling a kid. It turns out it was his kid. He had trauma, so he assumed the guy was kidnapping the kid, so he chased him down, didn't ask any questions, and threw him in a fountain and started beating him in the mall in front of a crowd of people, and his kid was standing right there. So then he loses his job, and I guess he goes to like an employment agency. And the guy who was starring in the movie, his name is Josh something. I've seen him in stuff before. He was in that movie. What is that movie called? I didn't watch it. Or I saw one of them and I didn't like it. It was like one of those series movies. But he was in a movie that I did like. What is that movie called? I'm trying to think of it. It was that movie with Journey to like the Center of the Earth 1 and 2. I like that movie. And then he was like in some other stuff. I think they were all kids movies though that I've seen him in. So it's that guy, and then Matthew Lillard. And I feel like her name is Mary Stuart Masterson. I've seen her in stuff like stuff from the 80s. Yeah, it was like those main people that were like the famous people that you know, and the other people were like people I didn't know. So I'm watching the movie and I'm like, okay, this guy, he has some issues. But he goes to the employment place and he sees Matthew Lillard. That's who I'm thinking of. I think I said his name. And I generally like all his movies, most of his movies, because I used to watch them a lot when I was a kid. So it was kind of shocker the way it turned out, but it was like, okay, this makes sense, but weird. So he was an employment guy who sent him to the place because the place was like a pizza place with like animatronics. He's like, yeah, your job thing sucks. And he like looked at his resume and he saw his name. And then he's like, I have the perfect job for you. And he sent them there. And then when you realize he knew who he was, and because he's like, he's acting like he doesn't know who he is, but then he sees the name, then he's like, okay, I'm going to send you here. And it's like, it's a night job. Because it's like a night security job, and you're thinking like, okay, this is fine. What's the big deal? It's a night security job. So he goes there, and he's there, and he's like thinking, oh, nothing of it. But turns out, because there's like little subplots and everything, so he has this sister, and he had this babysitter. She would watch his sister when he'd go to work, but there was no background to like how they knew this babysitter. But she would watch her, and then it turns out he was in a custody battle, or they were fighting over his sister because his parents died, or at least they said his mother died, and his father might have took off because he was so depressed because he had a younger brother that was kidnapped. And then that gets into another subplot that's sad. So he's like having all these issues and trying to remember and find his brother, but he has no luck. And then in the process of that, he almost loses his sister. But before we get there, because it was never really said, like, Matthew Lillard didn't have a big part in the movie. He was just the guy who sent him on the job. But then in the end, it's like, oh, this is why he sent him to the job, because he knew who he was. And he was a bad person. So then he starts this job and he meets a police officer. And then that comes around where it's like, okay, this is crazy. That this police officer sought him out and everything, and she knew she didn't know who he was, but she knew he worked there, and she knew about everything that was going on at this place, because that's another twist with her. Whenever something went wrong, she would show up. But then in the end, when things went wrong, she was like, no, I can't show up. And then, because that's a twist. So, it turns out his aunt paid these people, or we're going to pay these people, to make him want to give up his sister, because she wanted his sister, but he felt she wanted his sister because his sister got a monthly check. His sister was a little mentally off. Actually, not a little mentally off. She was really mentally off. But she was a little girl. And he's trying to keep his sister, keep everything together, stay together. And he's like depressed about losing his brother, because his mother asked him to watch him when they were like in the woods. And he was like 12 to watch his little brother. He turns around and get a frisbee. Next thing he knows, his brother's gone. So then he's taking like these sleeping pills and everything to try and remember where to find his brother. But then it comes out what happened to his brother in the end, which is another twist. So basically, he works at this place. His aunt pays the babysitter, or offers to pay the babysitter, because it was like they were at a table in a restaurant. The babysitter and the guy who seemed like her boyfriend and the lawyer. And she's like, I'll pay you $1,000. Make him lose his job, because that's like the key to him keeping his sisters having a job. So they break into this place, and they're like, okay, we're going to mess it up to make sure he loses his job. So it turns out, they break in, turns out because he's working in like this pizza place that closed, and they say in the 80s or something, which didn't make sense, because I was trying to figure out how old they were supposed to be playing, because he's supposed to be like a grown man with like a little sister. I think they said the sister was like 9, and he's supposed to be like a grown man, so I'm like trying to figure out, and it's his full-blood sister, so it's like, how old are they supposed to be if they're talking about the 80s, where they remember it fondly, and you have a 9-year-old sister with the same parents, which would make you in your 30s. That would make you like 33 plus. 33 plus. If you're old enough to remember the 80s. Yeah, so, and you have a 9-year-old sister. That would mean your parents either had you really young, or I don't know. But, so, he's working there, and then he's like hearing stuff, and he's not thinking anything of it. But then he meets her, and then there are these she shows him the animatronics and everything, because turns out this cop, she knows everything about the place. And he's like, how do you know so much about this place? And then she doesn't want to tell him. But then when the babysitter comes up missing, he has to bring his sister there. And then he goes to sleep, she goes to sleep, and the animatronics are there. And they call out to his sister, because it turns out the animatronics, they have bodies inside of them of children. And they're basically possessed by children, because their bodies are inside. And then she comes in. He finds her, and she's with them, and then he's confused, like, how is this working? How are they playing with her and everything? And it's just like a weird thing. So then the cop comes in, and then they talk, and she knows stuff, but she doesn't really tell him. And then she joins in, and they make a fort, and they play. And then in the end, she's like, don't bring your sister back here. And he does again. And then stuff gets weird. And then they're like, oh, we really like her. And then she goes back. Wait, no, he goes back and he takes his medicine and stuff. Oh, yeah, the animatronics, they're possessed demon children. The bodies inside. They killed the babysitter, her boyfriend, and then the 2 friends they brought along. And then later I'm not sure if they killed the aunt, but it seems like they killed the aunt. And then they almost killed the cop. And the cop warned them not to bring her back there. And then she knew so much, she didn't want to say why she knew so much at first, but turns out her father was the owner, and they turned on him when he accidentally said in his sleep that he would give his sister away. And then turns out they wanted his sister to become one of them, and then they show up at the house, and because he was having trouble because the babysitter didn't show up, and he wanted to go back to the place and go into like his mood, so then they attack him. They show up at the house, they kill or hurt the aunt because the aunt disappears after that. And he realizes that they're dangerous and they want to get rid of him and all this stuff. So then he gets, oh wait, no, she saves him somehow. And she's like, oh, I found you. Don't go back there. Don't take your sister there. And then he realizes his sister's gone and that they have her. And then she helps him. And then that's when she comes out and she's like, her father is the one who owned the place. That's how she knows so much. But she still doesn't say who her father is because he still doesn't realize who her father is. And then go back there, short out, pour water, electrocute the things he does. And he tries to get his sister back, but his sister's like so off. She's like, she wants to play with them. They're her friends. And even after they kill her aunt, and then they almost, and then the cops in the hospital, because that's the crazy part about that. So she comes back because like they're almost gonna be killed by the robotic animatronic children ghost. And then it turns out her father is the leader, who she said, and he was like the big yellow bunny. And he killed all of them. And it turns out he kidnapped his brother. And that's why he knew who he was. Because it was a story in the news, I guess. He kidnapped his brother. And he said he killed his brother. And then he wanted his sister. And he wanted to kill him. And turns out his daughter, she decides she can get up enough courage to face him. Because she was like, I can't go with you. I can't help you. So then she turns. And then she tries to help him. And turns out he stabbed her, and then she was like in a coma in the hospital. Turns out her father was the job counselor, Matthew Lillard's character. And then they end up escaping, and they work on forgiving her, and they go visit her. Well, he visits her in the hospital and has her sister wait in the waiting room while she's in a coma, but they never say what happened to the aunt. But then they say in the end, the girl, she's doing better in school. But she's like, can we still go see my friends, the children that are dead in the animatronics? She still wants to play with them and be friends with them, even though they tried to kill her. But she saves the day because they like pictures. So she drew a picture to let them know that it was the big yellow bunny that killed them and everything. Because they looked up to him and they loved him. And but the children were like serial killer ghosts. Yeah, it was a weird story, but it was interesting. And that's pretty much what happened. If you like, watch and subscribe. That's my review. I liked it. I pretty much told you what happened, like I do in everything, but I liked the movie. It was good. It was just kind of a shocker when Matthew Lillard at the end, the job counselor, turned out to be the big yellow bunny and he was killing these children and he owned the pizza place. But then it made me think, how old was he if he owned this pizza place and stuff back in the 80s? It was like the dates didn't really seem to go together. They should have said like the 90s because they didn't look old enough where they would have been old enough to remember the 90s or the 80s, because it would have made more sense if it was the 90s. Because I'm assuming the movie took place in present time. And I'm pretty sure they said all this stuff was in the 80s, but I don't know. And that's pretty much the story, what happened. I liked it. I thought it was interesting. A bit odd, but interesting, and it was scary. Yep. So, like and subscribe. And keep supporting my channel. Bye.